Billionaire husband watches his pregnant wife get slapped across the face at the charity gala and does absolutely nothing while his sister laughs. My beautiful family, may the Lord wrap you in peace tonight. May He heal every hidden wound and turn your pain into power. If this story touches your heart, type present below so I know you're with me. If it stirs your spirit, type, I stand with Sherry. Every comment, every like, every share is oxygen to this family we're building together. Please don't leave early. It breaks my heart when you do. Stay until the very last word. I wrote this for you. Family will cut you deepest when you trust them the most, and Sherry Woods learned that truth in one brutal second under $1 million worth of crystal chandeliers. The annual Children's Hope Gala at the Grand Regent Hotel was the crown jewel of the city's social season. Diamonds flashed, cameras rolled, and 500 of the world's richest people pretended they cared about orphans for 3 hours. Sherry Woods, all 7 months pregnant and glowing in a custom silk gown the color of moonlight, stood proudly at her husband's side. Clayton Allred, 35, ruthless, untouchable, $5 billion empire stamped on his cufflinks, had his arm around her like she was the most precious thing he owned. Then everything shattered. Catherine Allred, Clayton's older sister and the family's self-appointed queen, stormed across the marble floor in 6-inch heels that clicked like gunshots. Without a word, her hand whipped through the air. The slap landed so hard across Sherry's cheek that the sound ricocheted off the gold-leafed walls like a thunderclap. Sherry's head snapped to the side, one hand flying to her face, the other cradling her belly as she stumbled back. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Champagne flutes froze halfway to Botoxed lips. Every phone in the room rose in perfect, merciless unison, already recording, already uploading. Tomorrow the clip would be everywhere. Pregnant wife publicly slapped at Gala, billionaire husband just watches. You filthy gold-digging parasite. Catherine hissed, loud enough for the front row to hear. You think you can carry an all-red air after everything you've done? Touch my family again and I'll make sure you lose more than your dignity. Tears stung Sherry's eyes. But the real pain wasn't the burning imprint of Catherine's hand. It was the silence behind her. She turned, searching for the one man who swore to protect her. Clayton stood 10 feet away, champagne in hand, face carved from ice. Not a step forward, not a word. Just those cold gray eyes watching his pregnant wife get publicly destroyed by his own blood and choosing to do nothing. Clayton, Sherry whispered, her voice cracking like thin ice. He didn't move. That was the moment Sherry Woods realized her marriage, her safety, her future. Everything was a lie. Clayton Allred felt the room staring at him like 1,000 knives. The orchestra had started playing again, some desperate attempt to pretend the gala could be saved. But the music sounded tinny. Wrong. Every laugh was too loud. Every clink of crystal too sharp. Phones were still out, discreetly angled toward him now instead of Sherry. He was the new exhibit. The billionaire who let his pregnant wife take a full palm slap to the face and didn't flinch. He drained his champagne in one swallow and set the flute down harder than he meant to. Catherine was already at his elbow, cheeks flushed with triumph, diamonds flashing like weapons. It had to be done, Clay, she murmured. Low enough for only him. She needed to remember her place before that baby comes. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because the truth, ugly, jagged, impossible to swallow, was that the moment Catherine's hand connected with Sherry's cheek, something in him had locked up. Not fear. Not anger. Just recognition. Catherine was blood. Sherry was a choice. And Allred's protected blood first. Always had. Their father had drilled it into them since they could walk. Still, he searched the crowd for his wife. Sherry stood near the marble pillar where she'd stumbled, one hand pressed to her cheek, the other cradling the curve of her belly. The red imprint of Catherine's hand glowed against her skin like a brand. She wasn't crying anymore. That was the part that chilled him. Her eyes, those warm hazel eyes that used to light up when he walked into a room, were flat, empty, fixed on him like he was a stranger. Clayton, she had whispered. He still hadn't moved. Now she turned away first, slowly, deliberately, as if every step cost her something precious. She didn't run. She didn't cause a scene. She simply walked, glided, through the parted crowd that instinctively made way for her. the way the sea once parted for Moses. Only this time the miracle was heartbreak. He told himself to follow her. His feet didn't listen. Catherine's fingers closed around his wrist. Let her cool off. Pregnant women are dramatic. He yanked free, harder than necessary. Don't. Catherine raised a perfectly arched brow. Don't what? Protect this family? She spilled wine on me first, Clayton. Deliberately. Everyone saw it. He hadn't seen it. He'd been across the room closing a handshake that would add another 100 million to the quarter. By the time he'd looked up, Catherine's hand was already swinging, but he didn't say that. He never contradicted Catherine in public. It was an unspoken rule older than their trust funds. A hedge fund titan Clayton had known since Harvard clapped him on the shoulder. Rough night, Allred. Your sister's got a hell of a right hook. The man laughed like it was sports. Others joined in, nervous, testing the temperature. Clayton forced the corners of his mouth upward. Inside, something cracked. By the time he reached the private elevator to the penthouse suite they kept for nights like this, the clip was already viral. Number Allred Gala slap trending worldwide. The top comment, with 1.2 million likes. He really just stood there and watched his pregnant wife get assaulted. Men will protect their empire before their family every time. He told himself the internet was trash. Told himself tomorrow it would be forgotten, but when the elevator doors slid open to their suite, Sherry was already in the bedroom. Door closed. Lock clicked. He heard the soft, unmistakable sound of her crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, endless. Like a faucet she couldn't turn off. He raised his hand to knock, then let it fall. Instead, he loosened his tie and poured a scotch at the bar. The city glittered 38 floors below, indifferent and beautiful. His phone buzzed nonstop. Board members, investors, his PR crisis team on standby. A single text from his CFO. We need to address this before Asian markets open. Perception is bleeding. He stared at the closed bedroom door. Somewhere behind it was the woman carrying his child. The woman who, 6 hours ago, had kissed him in the limo and whispered that she'd never been happier. Now she wouldn't even look at him. He told himself she was overreacting. Catherine had every right. Sherry had been pushing boundaries for months, wearing that ridiculous necklace their grandmother left to Catherine, whispering to the press about new blood in the company. She'd provoked it, but the lie tasted like ash. Because the truth, the one he couldn't say out loud even to himself, was that he'd frozen the second Catherine's hand rose. Not because he agreed. Not because he didn't love Sherry, but because the last time he'd chosen someone over Catherine, their father had cut him out of the will for 18 months and Catherine had cried for weeks, and Clayton Allred had sworn, at 15 years old, that he would never be the reason. His sister cried again. He drained the scotch. Tomorrow he would fix this. He would buy Sherry diamonds, send Catherine to Paris, release a statement about private family matters. The world would forget. But when he finally slid into bed at 3 a.m., the other side was cold. Sherry had moved to the guest suite without a word, and somewhere in the dark, Clayton felt the first hairline fracture in the foundation of everything he'd built. He just didn't know yet how wide it would split. She was gone before sunrise. Clayton woke to an empty penthouse and a note on the marble island, written in Sherry's neat, looping handwriting. I need space to breathe. Don't look for me. I'm safe. The baby is safe. That's all you get to know. No signature. No kiss mark. Just 4 sentences that sliced him open. He called her phone first, straight to voicemail. Then the driver. No one had requested the car. Security footage showed her walking out the private elevator at 4:47 a.m. in a simple black hoodie and leggings, belly hidden beneath the fabric, one small Louis Vuitton duffel over her shoulder. She paused at the lobby doors, looked straight into the camera for 3 full seconds, long enough for him to see the bruise blooming purple across her cheek, then disappeared into the still dark city. By 8 a.m., he had private investigators on retainer. By 9 a.m., he'd canceled every meeting and was tearing through her closet like a madman, searching for clues that weren't there. Her passport was gone. Her prenatal vitamins were gone. The sonogram photo they'd taped to the fridge, tiny heartbeat, flickering like a star, was gone. Nothing else. At 10:17 a.m., TMZ broke the story. Pregnant wife of billionaire Clayton Allred Missing hours after viral Gala slap. The clip played on loop beneath the headline. Catherine's hand cracking across Sherry's face. Clayton standing frozen. Sherry's whispered, "Clayton." Swallowed by the roar of the ballroom. By noon, the narrative was set in stone. He hit her. He paid someone to make her disappear. He's hiding her until the bruises fade. Where is Sherry Woods trended worldwide. His phone became a war zone. Board members demanding emergency meetings. Investors pulling commitments. One longtime partner, a man who'd toasted him at his wedding, texted a single line, "I can't be associated with whatever this is." Clayton barely felt it. He was pacing the penthouse like a caged animal, dialing every number she'd ever had, screaming at detectives who had nothing to give him. He called her obstetrician, patient confidentiality. He called her only friend from before they married, no idea. He even called the shelter she'd volunteered at in college, voice cracking, begging. No one had seen her. Night fell. The city glittered outside the windows, cruel and bright. He sat on the edge of their bed, her side still cold, and stared at the faint outline of her body in the sheets. For the first time in his adult life, Clayton Allred felt small. He kept replaying the Gala in his head. If he had stepped forward, if he had pulled Catherine away, if he had just wrapped his arms around Sherry right there in front of everyone and said, "Touch my wife again, and you're dead to me," maybe she would still be here. Maybe the baby would be kicking against his palm right now instead of God knows where. Catherine called at midnight. He let it ring. She texted, "You're overreacting. She's punishing you. She'll crawl back when the money runs out." He threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall like everything else. The next morning the stock opened down 12%. Analysts used words like leadership vacuum and reputational hemorrhage. Someone leaked that Clayton had missed 3 consecutive board votes because he was personally indisposed. Whispers of resignation circled like vultures. He didn't care. He sat in the nursery they hadn't finished painting soft butter yellow walls, crib still in the box, and stared at the tiny onesies folded in neat rows. One of them had a tiny embroidered whale. Sherry had laughed for 10 minutes when she found it, said their baby was going to be a swimmer. He pressed the fabric to his face and breathed in the faint scent of her vanilla, and something warmer, until it faded. 7 days turned into 14. Detectives found nothing. Her credit card stayed cold. Her socials went dark. The world decided Clayton Allred was either a monster or a murderer, and every night he stood at the window, scanning the streets 38 floors below, searching for a woman in a black hoodie who never came back. He started sleeping in her closet, curled on the carpet among her dresses, breathing her in like a drowning man breathing air. Because the terrifying truth was settling into his bones. Sherry hadn't just left the penthouse. She had vanished from his life completely, and the empire he'd spent 15 years building was starting to feel like payment for the one thing he'd failed to protect. 42 mornings Clayton woke up reaching for a body that wasn't there. 42 nights he stared at the same ceiling, the same silence, the same bruise-colored shadows under his eyes. The city had moved on. The internet had new scandals, but Allred Holdings was bleeding out in slow motion, and no one could find the wound. It started with whispers in boardrooms, then the whispers became emails, then cancellations. A sovereign fund in Qatar pulled $200 million overnight. A tech giant in California quietly shelved the joint venture they'd announced the week of the Gala. The excuses were polite, rehearsed. Reassessing risk parameters. Monitoring leadership stability. Translation: we don't trust a man who lets his pregnant wife disappear. Stock price, down 29% and falling. Market cap, no longer $5 billion, closer to 3 and dropping like a stone in deep water. Clayton still showed up to the office every day. Because that's what all red men did. They didn't hide. They stood on the bridge while the ship sank and pretended the water wasn't cold. But the building felt haunted. Employees avoided eye contact in the elevators. Assistants flinched when he said good morning. The 40th floor, once a hive of ruthless ambition, now hummed with the quiet panic of people updating resumes. He found the first leak on a Tuesday. A confidential memo details of the offshore restructuring he'd been negotiating for 18 months splashed across the front page of the Financial Times. The kind of leak that cost 9 figures and 3 years in prison if anyone ever proved who did it. His CFO cornered him in the executive washroom. Voice shaking. Clayton, someone inside is feeding them everything. We're hemorrhaging proprietary data. If we don't plug this today, the SEC opens an investigation tomorrow. Clayton stared at his reflection. Hollow cheeks, red-rimmed eyes. The ghost of a man who used to own the skyline. Find them, he said. They never did. Instead, the leaks multiplied. Bidding strategies. Salary bands. A recording grainy but unmistakable of Clayton screaming at a detective over speakerphone. I don't care what it costs. Find my wife. Within hours it was everywhere. The ruthless billionaire, desperate, weak. Catherine breezed into his office that Friday like nothing was wrong. Red souls flashing, smile sharp enough to cut glass. You look like hell, little brother. He didn't look up from the resignation letter in his hand, his third EVP in 2 weeks. Catherine, not now. She dropped a thick folder on his desk. Damage control. I've already spoken to the board. We spin this as post-traumatic stress, temporary leave of absence. I step in as interim CEO until you... No. The word cracked like ice. You're not touching my company. Her laugh was soft. Lethal. It stopped being just yours the day you let that girl destroy our reputation. Someone has to clean up your mess. He finally met her eyes. You still think this is about Sherry? Catherine leaned in, perfume expensive and cloying. Everything is always about family, Clayton. You forgot that for 5 minutes at the gala, and now look. She gestured at the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawling beneath them like a kingdom on fire. But don't worry, Big Sister is here. That night another bomb dropped. An anonymous email sent to every major outlet contained bank records showing large, unexplained transfers from Allred Holdings into an account registered to a Cayman shell company. The timestamps lined up perfectly with the days Clayton had been too broken to notice anything, except the empty side of the bed. He sat alone in the boardroom at 2 a.m. Security feeds paused on an image of Catherine leaving the building at 11:47 p.m., the night before the first leak went live. Her reflection in the glass doors looked almost satisfied. His hand trembled on the phone. One call, one question, and the entire illusion would shatter. He never dialed. Because if Catherine was betraying him, if the sister he'd chosen over his pregnant wife was the blade in his back, then everything he'd sacrificed Sherry for was ash. So he poured another scotch, watched the numbers on the ticker bleed red, and told himself tomorrow he would fight. Tomorrow never came. By the end of the 8th week, the empire his grandfather had built with steel and ruthlessness, the one his father had tripled, the one Clayton had sworn would outlive him, was on life support. And still, every morning, he checked the nursery, still touched the tiny whale onesie, still whispered into the silence, "Come home, Sherry. Please come home." But the city kept burning, and the woman who could have saved him, who might have been the only one who ever truly saw him, was gone. And Clayton Allred, for the first time in his life, had no idea who to trust, not even himself. The truth arrived on a Thursday, disguised as a plain manila envelope slid under his office door at 4:12 a.m. Clayton hadn't slept in 3 days. He'd been living on espresso and the faint hope that the next phone call would be Sherry's voice. The envelope had no label, no courier stamp, just his name typed in courier font, the way their father used to type when he was furious. Inside, a single flash drive and a photograph. The photograph first. It was old, taken the night their parents died in the helicopter crash. Clayton was 22, Catherine 27. They were standing on the tarmac, rain soaking their black clothes. His arm was around her shoulders. Her hand rested protectively over her stomach, her very slightly rounded stomach. Clayton's hand shook so hard the photo fluttered to the carpet. He jammed the drive into his laptop. Folders, hundreds of them, emails dating back 4 years, bank transfers, medical records, a paternity test dated 7 months before he married Sherry. The child Catherine had miscarried at 16 weeks. His child, according to the DNA match, was never their cousin's. The story she'd fed the family. It was Clayton's. He read it twice, then vomited into the wastebasket. The rest unfolded like a horror film he couldn't pause. Catherine had been siphoning funds since the day Sherry announced the pregnancy, small amounts at first, then millions. She'd hired the anonymous leakers. She'd paid a tabloid editor to keep the Gala slap trending. She'd even funded the fake Cayman account to make it look like Clayton was embezzling. And the worst file of all, a scanned letter in Catherine's handwriting, dated the week of the gala. If she has the heir, everything father promised me dies with her. The all-red name belongs to real blood. I will burn it all before I let that child take what's mine. Clayton sat in the dark office until sunrise, the city bleeding gold across the windows, and felt his entire childhood fracture. He drove to Catherine's penthouse himself. No driver, no security, just him and the gun in the glove box he'd never loaded. She opened the door in silk pajamas, hair perfect, smile already in place. "Clay, you look." He shoved the photograph into her chest. Hard. Her mask slipped for half a second. Just long enough. "You were pregnant," he said, voice raw. "My baby. You told me it was some college boyfriend. You let me grieve with you while you lied to my face for 13 years. Catherine recovered, eyes glittering. "You were 22. Father would have disinherited us both. I protected you. You protected yourself." He stepped inside, slammed the door. "You've been destroying everything I built because Sherry's carrying the heir you lost." "Say it." For the first time in his life, Catherine looked small. "I was supposed to be the last Allred," she whispered. "Father's will was clear. If no direct male heir by my 35th birthday, everything reverts to the foundation gone. You were never meant to marry, Clayton. You were meant to stay loyal." He laughed, a broken sound. "So you slapped my pregnant wife in front of the world. You leaked secrets that tanked a $5 billion company. You let the mother of my child disappear just to keep your inheritance?" Catherine lifted her chin. "I did what all Reds do. I survived." Something inside him snapped clean in two. He grabbed her wrist, the same one that had struck Sherry, and pinned it to the wall. "Where is she?" "I don't. Where is my wife?" Catherine's eyes filled with tears, real ones, or the best performance of her life. "I don't know, Clayton. I swear on Mother's grave I never touched her after the gala. I only wanted her gone. Scared. Not harmed." He searched her face and saw the terrifying truth. She was telling the truth about that. At least, he released her like she burned. Catherine slid down the wall, hugging her knees. "You'll never choose me now," she said quietly. "Not after this." Clayton backed away, chest heaving. "I already chose you," he said. "That night at the gala. I chose you over the woman I love and the child I'll never meet if I don't find them. I chose you, and you used it to gut me." He left her crying on Italian marble and drove into the dawn with no destination. His sister, his North Star, his protector. His excuse was poison, and somewhere out there, Sherry was carrying his future in her belly, alone. Because he'd been too blind, too loyal, too weak to see the monster wearing his sister's face. For the first time in 6 months, Clayton Allred stopped praying for his empire. He started praying for forgiveness he wasn't sure he deserved. 6 months, 183 days of nothing. Then the doorbell rang at 9:07 p.m. on a rainy Thursday in October. Clayton was on the couch in yesterday's clothes, the nursery monitor glowing on the coffee table like a cruel joke. The empire was on life support. The board had voted him out as CEO that morning. He hadn't shaved in weeks. He looked like a man who'd been buried alive and clawed his way out wrong. He opened the door, and there she was. Sherry Woods Allred stood in the hallway light, soaked from the rain, 8.5 months pregnant, and more beautiful than any memory had the right to be. Her hair was shorter, darker, her eyes were older. She wore a simple black raincoat and boots, no jewelry except the wedding ring she'd never removed. A single duffel hung from her shoulder. Behind her, a lone security guard from the lobby hovered, unsure whether to interfere. Clayton's knees almost gave out. "Sherry." Her name cracked in his throat like ice breaking. She didn't smile, didn't cry, just looked at him with the calm of someone who'd already buried him once. "May I come in?" she asked, polite, like she was visiting a stranger. He stepped aside, hands shaking too hard to touch her. She walked past him, slow and careful, one palm under the weight of her belly. The baby kicked visibly under the wet coat, and Clayton made a sound he didn't recognize, half sob, half prayer. Sherry stopped in the living room, took it all in. The empty scotch bottles, the unopened sympathy flowers wilting on the console, the stack of tabloids still screaming, "Where is she?" She didn't flinch. "You kept the whale onesie on the mantel," she said quietly. I couldn't put it away. She nodded once, then turned to face him fully. I'm only here for one reason, Clayton. The baby is breech. The doctor wants me in the city for delivery. I'm staying at the Four Seasons until he's born. After that, I'm gone again. For good. The words hit harder than Catherine's slap ever could. Sherry, please. He reached for her, but she stepped back, hand raised like a shield. Don't. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. You don't get to touch me. You lost that right the night you watched your sister hit me and chose her. Tears burned his eyes. I know what I did. I know what it cost. Catherine, she was. I don't care about Catherine anymore. Sherry cut him off, calm and merciless. I cared that my husband stood 10 feet away while I was humiliated and bleeding, carrying his child. I cared that I begged you with my eyes and you looked away. That's what I carried for 6 months. Clayton, not your empire, not your guilt, your silence. He dropped to his knees right there on the marble, forehead pressed to the floor. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything. I chose wrong. I lost everything because I chose wrong. Please, let me fix. You can't fix me. She crouched, slowly, carefully, and lifted his chin so he had to meet her eyes. But you can be in the delivery room if you keep your distance until then. You can hold your son once. After that, we decide what kind of father you're allowed to be. Not husband, father. Those are separate things now. Clayton stared at her, shattered and grateful and terrified all at once. The woman he'd married would have cried, forgiven, clung to him. This woman was a stranger wearing Sherry's face, and she was magnificent. Where did you go? He whispered. She stood, smoothing the coat over the perfect round of her belly. Somewhere safe. Somewhere no one could buy or threaten or slap me again. I learned how to disappear, Clayton. Turns out I'm very good at it. A ghost of a smile touched her lips, sad, proud, final. I also learned I don't need you. That was the hardest part. And, the most important, she walked toward the guest wing, the one she'd moved into the night of the gala, and paused at the hallway. I'll have the doctor call you with the induction date. Be sober, be on time. And Clayton, he looked up, tears streaming. Don't ever stand frozen again. Not when it comes to him. Then she closed the door softly, and the sound was louder than any slam. Clayton stayed on his knees until dawn, listening to the faint rustle of her unpacking in the next room, the soft hum of a lullaby she sang to their son. His wife was home, but the girl who used to run into his arms was gone forever, and the man who'd let her break was still trying to figure out how to become someone worthy of the woman who'd come back in her place. The city was on fire with lightning when Clayton walked back into the penthouse at 4:43 a.m., still wearing blood-streaked scrubs and the ghost of his newborn son's weight in his empty arms. Catherine was waiting. She stood in the nursery doorway, the one room he hadn't let her near in weeks, one hand resting on the untouched crib like she belonged there. Get away from his things, Clayton said. His voice didn't sound human. Catherine turned, eyes swollen, lipstick smeared. I just wanted to see my nephew's room, Clay. He's blood. The word blood snapped something inside him. He crossed the room in 3 strides and slammed her against the butter-yellow wall hard enough to rattle the mobile of tiny wails. You don't get to say that word. His forearm pressed across her collarbone. You lost the right when you tried to erase my son before he was even born. Catherine's breath hitched. You're hurting me. You slapped my pregnant wife so hard she tasted blood while our baby kicked inside her. You leaked secrets that killed the company our grandfather built with his bare hands. You wanted Sherry gone dead or terrified. Didn't matter, so your inheritance stayed safe. Don't talk to me about hurting. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Real ones this time. I was scared, Clayton. Father's will is ash, just like everything else you touched. He released her, so suddenly she slid to the floor. I have a son now. His name is Clayton Alexander Allred IV, and you will never breathe the same air as him. You are dead to us. Catherine looked up, broken. You'd choose her over me? After everything I did to protect this family? There is no family left to protect. He laughed, a raw, ugly sound. You made sure of that. He left her sobbing on the nursery floor and went to find the only person who still owned pieces of his soul. Sherry was in the guest suite, sitting in the dark, baby monitor glowing on the nightstand. Their son slept in the bassinet beside her, tiny fists curled, breathing steady. She didn't look surprised to see him. "I ended it," Clayton said. "Catherine. Forever." Sherry's eyes were flat, exhausted. "Good." One of us finally grew a spine. The words cut deeper than any knife. He fell to his knees beside the bed. "Sherry, I was wrong. About everything. I chose blood that poisoned me and lost the only person who ever chose me back. I watched her hit you and I stood there like a coward because I was terrified of being alone. I'm still terrified. But I'm more terrified of living without you." She stared at him for a long time. Lightning flashed, illuminating the tear tracks on her face. "You let her break me in front of the entire world," she whispered. "You let them film it. You let them call me trash, while I protected your child with my body. I begged you with my eyes, Clayton, and you looked away." "I know." His voice cracked. "I see it every time I close my eyes. I hear the sound that Slap made. I will never unsee the moment you realized I wasn't your safe place anymore." Sherry's hand moved to the faint scar on her cheek, the one the makeup artists could never quite hide. "I left because I had to learn how to be a mother without a husband, who valued his sister over his family. I came back for our son, not for you." Clayton bowed his head until his forehead touched the mattress beside her thigh. "Then let me earn the right to stay. Not as the man who failed you, as the man who will spend every remaining day making sure no one ever hurts you again. Starting with me." Silence stretched, broken only by the soft baby snuffles and the rain against the windows. Finally Sherry spoke. So quietly he almost missed it. "You don't get to fix me, Clayton. You get to witness me whole. And if you ever choose anyone over this child again, I will take him and disappear so completely, you'll spend the rest of your life staring at empty horizons." He lifted his head. "Understood." She studied him, searching for the lie that wasn't there anymore. Then, slowly, she reached out and threaded her fingers through his. Outside, the storm began to quiet. Inside, two shattered people held on to the only thing still unbroken between them. The sleeping baby, who would never know the price paid for his first breath. Clayton's empire was gone. His sister was gone. His illusions were gone. But his family, fragile, furious, and fighting for life, was finally, painfully, in the same room. And for the first time in 6 months, Clayton Allred didn't feel alone. 3 months later, the headlines were finally quiet. Allred Holdings filed Chapter 11 on a gray Tuesday in January. The company that once owned half the skyline was carved up and sold in pieces to strangers who never knew its ghosts. Clayton signed the papers in a conference room that still smelled like his father's cigars, then walked out without looking back. He kept the penthouse, barely. The bank let him stay because Sherry and the baby were listed on the deed. Everything else was gone. The jet, the Hamptons house, the art, the name on the building. Even the charity foundation was dissolved after Catherine's indictment made national news. Catherine herself was in federal custody awaiting trial. She had stopped calling weeks ago. The last time he visited, she stared through the glass like he was already dead. He didn't blame her. Clayton spent his days learning how to be ordinary. He pushed a stroller through Central Park at dawn. Alexander bundled against the cold, tiny mittens waving at pigeons. He learned the difference between 2% and whole milk, the exact temperature of a bottle. The way Sherry's shoulders relaxed when the baby finally latched after a long crying jag. He learned silence, how to sit in it without filling it with apologies or money or promises he used to break. Some nights Sherry let him sleep on the couch. Some nights she didn't. They hadn't shared a bed since she came home. He never asked. He just woke at 3 a.m. when Alexander cried, changed diapers by nightlight, and carried the baby to her so she could nurse without getting up. She watched him do it all with the same unreadable eyes. One evening in early spring, he came home from the corner bodega, paper bag of diapers and coffee in his arms, and found her on the terrace. Alexander slept against her chest in a sling, city lights flickering awake below them. She was wearing one of his old Columbia sweatshirts, sleeves pushed up, hair twisted on top of her head. She looked peaceful, untouchable. Clayton set the bag down quietly and leaned against the doorframe. "I got an offer today," he said. "A startup. They want me to consult. Equity only. Probably worthless. But it's something." Sherry didn't turn. "Will you take it?" I told them I had to ask my wife first. That made her look at him. The word wife hung between them like a fragile thread. I'm not your wife anymore, Clayton. Not the way I was. I know. He swallowed. But I'm still your husband. If you'll let me keep trying to deserve it. She studied him for a long time. Wind lifted the edges of her hair. I used to dream you'd come find me, she said quietly. Every single night for 6 months. I fell asleep hoping tomorrow would be the day you chose me over everything else. You never came. Over. Clayton's eyes filled. I was looking in all the wrong places. I know that now. She shifted the baby higher against her heart. I also know I don't need you to survive anymore. I proved that. The question is whether I want you in the life I built without you. He stepped closer, slow, hands open at his sides. Then let me apply for the position. No money, no name, no guarantees. Just me, showing up every single day, until you believe I'll never stand frozen again. Sherry looked out over the city that had once belonged to him and now belonged to neither. I'm taking Alexander to my mother's this summer. 3 months, maybe longer. I need to know who I am when I'm not somebody's wife, or somebody's victim. Clayton nodded, throat tight. I'll keep the couch warm. A ghost of a smile touched her mouth, the first real one he'd seen in almost a year. You might have to get your own place, but you can have weekends. And first dibs on bedtime stories. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't forever, but it was a door cracked open when he had expected it welded shut. Clayton sank onto the terrace floor, back against the glass, and let the tears come silently. Sherry watched him for a moment, then stepped over and lowered herself beside him. Alexander stirred between them, sighed, settled again. They sat like that until the sky went indigo and the first stars appeared. In the end, the empire was ash. The sister was gone. The man he'd been was dead. But a woman who had learned to save herself was choosing. Humbler man, walk beside her. And Clayton Allred broke, disgraced, and finally awake, understood that some things could not be bought back. They could only be earned, breath by breath, until the woman strong enough to leave, decided the man brave enough to stay, was worth keeping. He didn't know if she ever would, but for the first time in his life, he was willing to wait as long as it took, even if it took the rest of his days. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.